You're sitting across from someone, and what you want to know isn't whether they're smiling or frowning, it's what they're really thinking. Don't waste your time trying to decode facial expressions or analyze hand gestures. There are 8 simple questions that can cut straight through, right into the world inside them. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Know yourself." But if you know how to ask the right questions, you won't just understand yourself, you'll start to read the person in front of you. This isn't about manipulation. It's not about trying to win. It's about real connection, smart communication, and seeing the human beneath the surface in any conversation. This is a psychological skill anyone can learn to connect more genuinely, more deeply, more intelligently. Because if you've ever wanted to understand someone beyond just what they say, these 8 questions are about to change the way you listen forever. Late night, 2 cups of tea slowly cooling on the balcony table. The wind whispers the kind of questions no one dares to ask during the day. I look at my best friend, his face calm, like nothing's breaking inside, and I ask, if you could do anything in the world, and there was no way you could fail, what would you do? He lets out a dry laugh. Bruh, the way you ask that makes me feel like I've just been existing this whole time. But then, he goes quiet, longer than usual. A few minutes later, when the streetlights start flickering out, he finally says, softly, "I'd want to be a mindset coach for high school kids." Sounds simple, right? But I knew that answer didn't come out of nowhere. That was a dream buried under tons of stability plans, family pressure, and fear of failure. This question, it's not about daydreaming. It's a shortcut, a way to bypass every mental wall your brain builds to keep you safe. No more would my boss approve. No more what if I fail. No more what will people think. It's a way to exhale and listen to the answer that comes from the deepest part of you. Not logic, soul. Marcus Aurelius once said, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." And that's the truth, isn't it? The problem is, most of us don't dare to admit what we really want, because wanting something makes you vulnerable. To want something means you have to be braver than your fear of wanting it, you know. So many people end up living 10 years for something they never even chose. They do it because it's stable, because it's what's expected, because it's too late to start over now. That's the trap. We're so afraid to fail that we never ask the real question. If I couldn't fail, what would I do? I know a guy, tech industry, smart, high salary, city life. But every time he gets a little drunk, he talks about dropping everything to teach English to kids in the mountains. 10 years later, still hasn't gone. Not because he's lazy, not because he's incapable, but because he never gave himself permission to dream honestly. Science actually has a name for this: signal cutting. Your brain's got a filter, the reticular activating system, designed to keep you safe. Anything too risky, too unrealistic, too unclear, it gets deleted. But the moment you ask yourself, if I couldn't fail, what would I do? You temporarily shut off that defense system and give truth a chance to speak. The beauty of that question isn't about finding what to do next. It's about learning to listen to yourself, not the version of you that plays the role society expects, but the deeper version, the one buried under meetings, deadlines, and paychecks. And here's the magic part. When you finally have the courage to look your dream in the eye, you start behaving differently. Maybe you make an unexpected decision. Maybe you take a turn you never thought you'd take. Like the next question I love asking anyone who wants to truly know themselves. What's a decision you once made that even surprised you? That's the moment your real self starts stepping into the light. Ready to tell that story? Let's keep going. In the next part, Tuesday, 10 a.m. marketing team meeting, tense as a tightrope. The slide deck's only halfway through when the boss slams the table. We're 3 weeks behind. Who's taking responsibility? Dead silence. No one says a word. I glance over at Rick, the quiet type. The guy who only speaks when absolutely necessary and out of nowhere. Rick stands up, doesn't look at anyone, doesn't defend himself, just says one line, "I'll take responsibility." The timeline was my suggestion. "I'll fix it." Bruh. The whole room just froze. Rick, the guy who avoids the spotlight, dodges conflict, just stepped up to take the hit. No blaming, no excuses, no fear of judgment. I was shocked, but more importantly, Rick was shocked by himself. Later, while grabbing coffee, he looked at me and said, "Damn bro, I can't believe I just did that." But it felt right. Most of us hate criticism so much that we'd rather stay quiet, even when we know we're at fault. Because when you take responsibility, you're not just admitting a mistake, you're putting yourself on the operating table and letting people dissect your character. But that exact moment, standing up and saying "I own this," it rips open the safe little box you've been living in. Rick shattered the image he'd held onto for years. I'm not the type to speak up. I don't take the lead. I stay in the background. And that moment of shattering, that was the first step toward real growth. Seneca once said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." Rick's not some superhuman. He just chose to try something different for the first time. But most people, we loop back into the same old version of ourselves because it feels safe. I'm an introvert, so I avoid public speaking. I'm the patient type, so I don't confront people. I'm too chill. I never apologize first. But bro, self-labeling is self-limiting. The more tightly you grip those personality labels, the more permanently you trap yourself in an outdated version of you. Sometimes, the turning point doesn't come from inspiration. It comes from being sick of being your own rerun. So ask yourself, when was the last time I truly surprised myself? If it's been a while since you've caught yourself off guard, maybe you've been living too deep in your comfort zone. This week, do one thing that goes against your usual identity. Doesn't have to be big, but it has to be different. Not so someone else admires you, but so you remember you're capable of change. And here's the wild part. When you start changing yourself, you start changing how you see other people. Just like that time I thought I had someone all figured out, and then one tiny moment shattered everything I thought I knew about them. So let me ask you, have you ever experienced a moment that made you completely change how you saw someone? That's when you're not just learning about them, you're relearning the way you see the world. Night falls. The soft yellow streetlights spill across the worn tile floor of the roadside cafe. I hear low whispers of the kitchen, dishes clinking, the wind sneaking through a half-open window, the quiet echo of tired footsteps. I sit alone, staring at the menu without seeing it, my mind drifting between fatigue and ideas that haven't yet settled. The elderly server, white hair, wrinkled skin, hands trembling, shuffles slowly to my table, placing a bowl of hot soup down. When she sets it, she accidentally nudges it so slightly that the soup spills onto the edge of the table. She glances around anxiously, as though scared someone might scold her. The customer next to her furrows their brow. Another glances at the old woman. And then, in that moment of silence, a man from a far corner rises. He looks like the kind of bad boy, black leather jacket, tattoos trailing from wrist up to shoulder, a hardened exterior that carries its own story. Everyone would expect him to turn away, ignore it, stay uninvolved. But he doesn't. He walks over, carefully grabs a napkin, dips it in water, and gently sweeps the spill. His voice is soft. "Don't worry. I got it." The whole space seems to pause. I look at him, the same guy I had already labeled tough, unfeeling. Don't expect him to help strangers. And in that moment, my heart sinks. Behavior described and shift in perception. That simple act shattered my preconception. Someone I assumed was hard, guarded, turned out to be the one helping without expecting anything. His "I got it" wasn't flashy. It wasn't dramatic. Just a quiet commitment, a promise that she was not alone. I wonder, why did I not trust him? Why did I define him before knowing anything? So many times we judge people by outward signs. Leather jacket, tattoos, stern face. We build walls. He's not kind. We fear being vulnerable, so we distance ourselves. We lack empathy. We lack patience behind the shell. We never ask, what's the story behind that tattoo? We never try stepping into their shoes to feel what they've felt. Epictetus once said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Have patience for others. Know each person carries their own weight. And demand of yourself. Don't let unseen prejudices govern your actions." Marcus Aurelius reminded, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you constantly assume the worst in others, your soul becomes stained by suspicion. But if you dare to look deeper, your soul takes on empathy's color. That's the power in the question. Have you ever had a moment that changed how you saw someone? It's a doorway from judgment into experience. I remember when I joined a remote volunteer project in a distant region. There was this young man, serious face, quiet. Many in the group said, "He's strange, hard to approach." One night, heavy rain. Our group got stranded on the road. Without prompt, he draped his raincoat over an elderly woman's supplies, walked alongside her for miles in the rain. No one asked. He just acted. In that moment, I thought, why did I ever assume he was aloof? That moment locked in a lesson. Shut your mouth when judging. Open your heart instead. The person who changed how you saw them understands no one is just the surface. When you ask yourself, when did I change how I saw someone? You start training your own empathy muscle. And empathy isn't weakness, it's power. It heals the isolation that prejudice builds. Tonight, if someone does something small for you, helps you, gives way, acts quietly selfless, watch, remember, don't assume. Write it down, who you thought they were and who they revealed themselves to be. And once you begin seeing others with more empathy, ask yourself, if you had power to shape how people treat one another, what would you choose? That next idea opens a bigger door, not just how you see people, but how you build the world around you, through actions that matter. There's a kind of dinner where everything looks fine on the surface, good food, polite conversation, but deep down, you can feel it. Every word coming out has been filtered through 3 layers of defense. Cold, professional, distant. I once had a dinner like that, with a potential business partner, the kind of person I thought would only talk about KPIs, budgets, and performance metrics. But halfway through the meal, I threw in a different kind of question. If you could change just one thing about the way people treat each other, what would it be? He looked at me, put down his fork and knife, and after a few seconds of silence, he said, "I wish people kept their promises. Not the contract ones. I mean the small stuff. Promises to reply to an email, to really listen, to not forget someone's birthday." Damn, that hit me harder than I expected. A simple answer, but it said so much. Because nobody chooses something they've never missed. When someone says, "I wish people showed more gratitude," maybe they've spent years being taken for granted. When someone says, "I wish people were more honest," maybe they've been betrayed. And when someone says, "I wish people kept their promises," chances are, they trusted the wrong person once. Most of us respond to people in one of 2 ways. We assume the best in people and get disappointed, or we assume the worst and never give anyone a real chance. But when you ask someone, if you could change one thing about how people treat each other, you're not just hearing what they want, you're hearing the wounds they carry. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." The most powerful response to being hurt is to not become what hurt you. If you've ever been lied to, you'll understand how sacred honesty is. If you've ever been abandoned, you'll understand how rare commitment is. And if you've ever been careless with someone, you'll understand the power of a sincere apology. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Know how you want people to treat you, and then become that kind of person first." I once worked with a boss who was tough. Not warm, not overly encouraging, but never missed a deadline. Never made promises he couldn't keep. Didn't hand out compliments, but I always knew I was respected. Because he respected his own word. That's when I realized, respect doesn't always show up in pretty words. Sometimes, it's hidden in whether or not someone follows through, especially on the small things. If you really want to understand someone, don't ask what food they like. Don't ask what show they're watching. Ask them, if you could change one thing about how people treat each other, what would it be? And then, really listen. Because what you'll hear is their inner value map, drawn from old pain, broken expectations, and the hopes they still hold on to. But you know what? People don't always express their values through big philosophical answers like "I want more empathy." Sometimes, what they care about most is wrapped inside one small moment from their week. That's why this next question might sound casual, but it's actually a backdoor straight into someone's soul. What was the highlight of your week? Let's go there next. Late Monday morning, I walk into a little cafe near my office, golden sunlight streaming through the blinds, the smell of freshly roasted coffee lingering in the air. I sit across from someone I've only just met, a partner, a collaborator for a project, meeting face to face for the first time. No social media fade, no polished image. After a few pleasantries about the weather, work, and quarterly reports, I pause and ask, "What was the highlight of your week?" It sounds light, almost trivial, but I know that question is a doorway into the soul. She hesitated a moment, eyes dropping to her cup as if doing mental arithmetic. Then she said, "The highlight this week was when I got a message from an old friend telling me that something I said to her before, encouragement I offered, helped her through a hard time. I don't remember the exact words, but she told me I made her feel less alone when she spoke that." Her eyes lit up. I felt the tremor, not because of praise, but because that is what she treasured most, making a positive impact on someone else. The highlight of the week question doesn't demand grand gestures. It isn't asking, "What big thing did you accomplish?" It's asking, "What made you feel alive, at least today?" And that reveals deeper priorities. If someone says their highlight was finishing a project, you know they value progress, results. If they say it was drinking coffee with their mother, you know they value connection, mending bonds. If they say it was listening to a song they never before had patience for, you know they search for quiet, emotional space. Lots of people ask, "Are you busy?" and expect the answer, "Yes, very busy." But what made you happy? Very few ever ask. They skip the joy part, dive straight into the weight. But the person who speaks a highlight, someone who names the small positive, is someone who refuses to be swallowed by everyday drama forever. Marcus Aurelius once noted, "Very little is needed to make a happy life." A fitting companion to this question. You don't need a grand story. You just need a small moment that stirs your heart. Epictetus also said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well." Don't demand perfection. Instead, turn your attention to the little good things in the realness of now. I remember a friend in a tech startup under endless deadlines, changing product versions nonstop. One week, her highlight was, "This morning I slept an extra 15 minutes without setting an alarm." I felt real rest. That small answer spoke volumes. She's running on empty. And rest, even brief, became her greatest gift. Another time, a colleague said, "I found a small torn paper slip on the stairwell. Someone left it behind." I picked it up, not sure what it was, but that moment made me think. I need to take more care with tiny things. That little detail shows attentiveness, someone who notices what others dismiss. So here's what I suggest. Don't skip asking what was your highlight. In conversation, try that question. You'll see their eyes brighten when they recall that small beauty. This week, on Sunday evening, pick one tiny highlight, even trivial, and ask yourself, what does that say about what I value? When you realize small moments carry weight, you begin to notice the details others call meaningless. And from there, I wonder, what's something so small, so easily overlooked, that it's made you think all day? The next section dives deeper. Fragments of the soul, tiny details that can shift how you see a lifetime. One late afternoon, I was riding the bus from downtown back home. Rain was drifting, the bus windows splattered with droplets. Outside, traffic rushed. Inside, the hum of the engine and the flip of a neighbor's book pages filled the space. When the bus stopped at an intersection, I caught sight through the window. An old person stood hesitantly under a store's overhang, waiting for the rain to ease. In their hand was a torn raincoat, fabric worn, patches sewn over holes. They methodically folded it, trying to place it carefully in their lap so the rain wouldn't leak through the gaps. That sight made me pause. A tattered raincoat, a small, almost insignificant object, but it held a story of age, of scarcity, of someone using something worn to rags because others would have trashed it long ago. All day that image kept returning in my mind. I asked myself, how many times has someone been passed over, unseen? How many times have people been forgotten? And why do we sometimes see only the torn coat and miss the person beneath the shell? Tiny details are often cracks through which emotion seeps. A glance, an old belonging, an act that seems accidental, all can awaken a part of a soul that's long asleep. That old person folding the raincoat, no one rushed them, no pitying stares, but the mindful care, folding each edge, preserving each crease, is an act of dignity that they still believe in. When someone notices those small things, they see you looking with different eyes, not judging, but understanding. You look to see, do they have something to cover? Are they protected from the rain? Do they need help? Those observations reveal much about who you are, sensitive, unwilling to leave anyone behind. Most of us pass through streets, hours, life, without seeing a lonely smile, a sad gaze, a worn-out raincoat, because we think we're too busy. Our instinct is to optimize time, avoid emotional cost. But those who tell small details, they refuse to let beauty, pain, or vulnerability be forgotten. They don't need to exaggerate. Just one detail is enough for someone to feel, I am seen. Someone still leans toward humanity, even after being hurt. Marcus Aurelius said, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look there." In paying attention to small details, you're not just looking deeply into others, you're also looking into yourself, your values, what you fear losing sight of. Epictetus taught, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Sometimes a small detail, like a torn raincoat, reminds you how much you once demanded, how much you judged, and now you learn to be rich in observation rather than rich in things. I used to know someone in tech, always dressed impeccably, designer shoes, curated watch. But during a picnic, I saw him stoop to pick up a tiny piece of trash beneath a park bench, placing it in his own trash bag. Seemed small, but I realized that person didn't want nature to suffer leftover waste. That small scene left a big impression. I remember, great people are not necessarily those who perform great acts, but those who never ignore small acts. Once on a flight attendant quietly offered a window seat to an elderly passenger. Others didn't notice, but that tiny gesture warmed the cabin. That's how a small detail becomes a container for the message, I see you. I want you to be comfortable. Don't dismiss small details. Don't think it's meaningless. Begin to notice. What minor thing did you see today that others might have missed? Commit it to memory. Ask yourself, what does that detail say about what I appreciate? When you begin to notice every little detail, you'll start hearing the old voice inside you, the beliefs you once held dear, and the things you once abandoned. So here's a question for you. What did you once believe that you no longer believe? The conference room was silent, fluorescent lights casting a pale glow over the polished table. The candidate sat opposite me, perfectly fitted shirt, polished shoes, confident eyes. I'd prepared questions in advance, but I knew the most revealing answer wouldn't come from his CV. I paused, held his gaze, and asked, "Is there something you used to believe that you no longer believe?" That moment was so still, you could hear a clock tick. He froze, cleared his throat, and said, "I used to believe that working non-stop meant pushing yourself into work, sacrificing personal time, sleeping less, skipping meals if needed. But I don't believe that anymore. I've come to see that true success comes from efficiency, clarity, and balance." The entire room seemed to exhale. He didn't claim, "I was always right." He didn't dress it up. He simply said, "I changed my belief." This question isn't for you to show off knowledge or achievements. It forces you to look at the cracks in your old beliefs, to admit you were wrong, or that you once deceived yourself. The person willing to say, "I used to be wrong," that's someone strong. The one who clings to past beliefs. "I never doubted, I was always right. I always stayed the course." They trap themselves in the shell of "I'm correct," preventing forward growth. Many candidates would default to answers like, "I persist always, I never give up. I believe I was always on the right path." Those answers may sound nice, but carry little depth. But someone who says, "I used to believe that, but now I don't," they show you process, change, growth. A person who never changes belief is destined to repeat the same patterns of error. A person brave enough to revise belief knows how to learn from past fractures, so they don't stumble over them again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's true worth is revealed by the measure of what he can give up." Letting go of a false belief is like shedding part of the ego. It's hard, but it's the path to becoming gentler, more generous, more understanding. Epictetus once said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." When you cling rigidly to a belief, you lock the door to learning. When you release it, you open the door forward. I had a friend who was a 24/7 marketer. He believed, "You must do more than everyone to survive in this industry." After years of burnout, sleeplessness, lost family connection, he changed that belief. Do less, but do what matters, and achieved better results. Clearer mind, more stable life. A CEO once thought only the leader should decide all things. After internal crisis, he realized collaboration, listening, power sharing, that's the key to sustainable organizations. Be ready for the question, what did you once believe that you no longer do? Changing belief isn't failure, it's proof of growth. This week, think of a belief you once held and ask, do I still believe it? When you recognize you held a false belief, you begin to ask, who made me change my mind? Often, it's someone who didn't speak much, but whose small act stuck with you. So the next idea is, who has ever made you feel you needed to change something about yourself? Soft late afternoon light filters through the glass windows of the old bookstore. I turn pages slowly, not hurried, not loud. Beside me, an elderly man sits in a low chair, reading a worn poetry collection. His clothes are simple, hair gray and sparse. His eyes are deep with calm as he reads. My legs ache. I stand and stroll among the shelves. Every time I turn, I see him. After a while, I smile and nod. He nods back. The moment feels taut, but not uncomfortable. Finally, I break the silence. Excuse me. Sir, I noticed you holding that old book so carefully. It's quite worn. Why do you read it? He looks at me. His voice is hoarse. gentle. I used to believe only new books were valuable. But at my age, I've come to see that an old book carries marks, memory lessons. It teaches me that I must honor the past and take responsibility for my memories. He leans closer, and that's when I realized I needed to change how I view time, human value, how we treat memory and others. I don't read just to accumulate knowledge. I read to feel. I listen in silence. No need for more explanation. He doesn't preach. He doesn't amplify. His way of living, handling pages with care, reading slowly, remembering every line of poetry, is itself a mirror. In that moment, a complete stranger, made me think, yeah, maybe I need to change how I race against time, slow down, revisit what's old, honor those once dear, value memory, the teacher not by words, but by how they live. That's the one you never forget. When you ask, have you ever met someone who made you feel you needed to change? You're not just hunting for a story to tell. You're seeking someone, and yourself, courageous enough to acknowledge change. One person might answer simply, yes, my father. Another might tell a detailed memory. I met someone I used to despise. Later he saved me from dark thoughts, and I had to change how I treated myself. A person who truly learns from others, who changes, doesn't cling to ego. They open to the reflections others hold up. Most of us remember the one who gives a lecture, but we forget the one who lives in quiet. We want someone to say change out loud, but forget that change often starts when you see yourself small next to someone's authenticity. Vulnerability fears someone living better than they do, because then they can't hide from the mirror. Strength is in being seen, acknowledging your flaws, and choosing to step forward. Marcus Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be ye one. Don't debate what kindness is supposed to be. Be it yourself. If you meet someone who inspires change, don't put them on a pedestal. Let that lesson sink in through your deeds, so you truly be one. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. If you see something you need to change, name it, then act on it. Once, I met an elderly volunteer teacher in a mountain region. She taught for free, bought her own supplies, even spent her own money to install a light bulb in a dim classroom. When I asked why, she said, I believe children in this region need light, and if I don't do it, who will? That answer, so simple, made me reflect. What light have I brought to others? What small goodness have I left behind? Not loudly, not persistently, just quietly, by example. Remember, the person who changes you is not always the one who lectures, but the one who lives kindly. The question, have you ever met someone who made you need to change, helps you recall your greatest wordless lesson. Write down who it was, what they did, what you want to change because of them. Have you ever sat alone, letting those questions we just walked through echo through your mind? If you couldn't fail, what would you do? What surprised you? What small detail stirred you, tearing through the silence inside you? In that moment, you realize you are no longer the person you were yesterday. You're not walking the same worn paths. You begin to see yourself and the world through a different pair of eyes. We just passed through 8 doors, from boundless dreams to moments of shifting perception, to how actions reveal others, to beliefs once so solid now dissolved. All of it leads back to a Stoic truth. Look inward. Master yourself. Let virtue be your compass. Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Peace is power. Silence is strength. Live deliberately. You are not just a viewer of this video. You're not walking this path alone. We walk together, amid burdens of uncertainty, doubts, and unspoken dreams. We all carry invisible battles. Let's carry each other. So what's the action moving forward? Choose one of those 8 questions. Put it into a conversation this week. Listen to the other person, and listen to yourself. Write down a highlight from your week. small, but enough to remind you still have longing. Gives if a small detail ever shatters your heart. Don't ignore it. Let it guide the person you are becoming. If you want to go deeper on each idea, with lessons, exercises, and specific guidance, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. This community grows because of people like you. People who want to evolve, to stand confidently, to connect truly. Peace is power. Silence is strength. Let's walk deliberately. Thank you for staying until the end. And remember, you don't have to walk alone.